Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I'm your host Louis Sung, and today we are going to be talking about day one of Dolphins training camp, which was yesterday. As of now, you are listening to this. Training camp has officially started. So now we can finally talk about some real football stuff going on. I hope you guys are excited because I know that I am. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into all of this. So there's plenty of stuff to talk about, plenty of different topics, plenty of things that stood out to me. I'm going to go over as much of it as I can. But before we do all that, just want to go ahead and mention that, as always, this show is brought to you by our good friends over at Ubreak Wheel Fix. Ubreak Wheel Fix is a complete automotive wheel solution. Ever parked too close to the sidewalk curb? Ubreak Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, and curb rash. Or maybe your wheels are faded or peeling. You don't need to replace them, as Ubreak Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new. Offering complete refinish options through powder coating, machining, and polishing, Ubreak Wheel Fix is the answer to all of your wheel needs. And if you're just looking to give your ride a new look, Ubreak Wheel Fix also offers many car customizing options, such as new custom wheels and tires from your favorite brands, performance upgrades, window tinting, and suspension modifications. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at ubreakwheelfix.com. They're really active on all social media platforms at Ubreak Wheel Fix, so shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and get an estimate in just minutes. So don't delay, go to Ubreak Wheel Fix and start customizing your ride to show off your Dolphins fandom today. This show is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is a revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. I know I'm really looking forward to the NFL coming back. All you have to do is choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose, or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up if you are any kind of a fantasy sports fan. So use the promo code 5, that's F-I-V-E, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code 5, F-I-V-E. Go to prizepicks.com, deposit your $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with and get started winning today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started with this training camp discussion. I'm going to go over as many topics as I possibly can because a lot of stuff happened on day one that kind of added some clarification to some things that we needed to hear about. First and foremost, as we had already discussed, Conor Williams will be actually reporting to training camp. He did report to training camp, and he even spoke to the media about this whole thing. So essentially, what is he going to do now? Is he going to be raising a fuss? Is he going to be disgruntled throughout the whole situation? Thankfully, no. It looks like Conor Williams, he understands. He even said it, and I quote, I'm going to go ahead and just pull that up here for you guys. So he said, and I quote, "Yeah, so let me get all this out of the way. Obviously, I wasn't happy with my contract. I had contract talks, all of OTAs and stuff. It was a time for business and everything. But the pads are coming on now, and it's time for football. It's time for camp. It's football time. No business anymore. I'm forgetting about that and moving on." He added on to that, "I'm head down and focused out here. Everything upstairs, agents can talk. I'm working on me and focusing on me right now. Focusing on my craft," which is good. So now we don't have to worry about this Liam Eichenberg experiment. I don't think that we're going to be seeing a whole lot of that anymore now that that Conor Williams situation has been taken care of. We still have Alama Ulave, who's actually a dedicated center. I'm sure that he's going to be getting his share of snaps at the center position. And now that Conor Williams is going to be in camp, we can actually get a better idea of what the starting offensive line might actually look like. Now, we're going to have a little bit of trouble with that, only because Teron Armstead and Isaiah Wynn both are actually going to be starting on the PUP list. So they were seen on the sidelines doing individual work. So it looks like that Teron Armstead might actually be one of the first ones to be ready to go again. So that's a good thing because of anybody who needs to be out there getting that kind of chemistry with the starting offensive line more than anybody else, it would probably be Teron Armstead. And Mike McDaniel spoke to the media as well before practice started, said that he really expects Teron Armstead and Isaiah Wynn to end up coming back before even Nick Needham and Tanner Conner. And in Isaiah Wynn's case, apparently he ended up hurting himself while he was training for training camp. Go figure. So once again, already, it looks like Isaiah Wynn's career as a Miami Dolphin is off to a fantastic start. For somebody who is considered an injury-prone player, and that was part of why he was having so many struggles, for him to not even be healthy for training camp because he ended up hurting himself during the training process, that does not bode well for his prospects as a Miami Dolphin right now. Now, I will say this because it is relevant. During Pulse of Fins Nation on Tuesday night, Alfredo Arteaga basically said that it's Isaiah Wynn's job to lose at left guard, which, quite frankly, I don't understand that logic. If I were the Miami Dolphins, I would be not looking at Isaiah Wynn as just this end-all, be-all answer at left guard. I brought up the possibility of Andrew Norwell, and ironically enough, as I was recording my show a couple nights ago, it ended up being that Try Turner got signed by the New Orleans Saints. Oops. Oh well, you can't predict the future that well. But I digress. If I were the Miami Dolphins, I would make it an open competition no matter what. And maybe, just maybe, now that Isaiah Wynn is on the PUP list, and if he was going to be projected as the starting left guard, there might be a chance for somebody else to step in there and prove that, hey, you know what, I should get just as much consideration as this former first-round draft pick who, quite frankly, the only thing keeping him from being a bust outright is the fact that he gets the excuse of, oh, well, I was never healthy, so I was never able to play to my fullest potential. So the Miami Dolphins are now giving him the opportunity to prove that he can play at his fullest potential. So starting off injured, not a good thing. But Conor Williams is going to be back at center, and he actually said something very interesting to me that makes me feel like maybe Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins coaching staff, maybe Frank Smith knew what he was talking about, maybe Matt Applebaum even knew what he was talking about even before he ended up getting fired after the season was over. I personally feel like they saw something in Conor Williams. They saw that, you know what, he'd be a fantastic center. And it turns out they were right. So give the Miami Dolphins credit for at least one thing regarding the offensive line. They took somebody who was supposed to lock down the guard position and turned him into basically an all-pro center. And he said today, Conor Williams did, and I quote, that he loves center. He feels like it's home. He feels like it's second nature. I feel like I should have been there all along. It's been good. He feels like he should have been there all along, ladies and gentlemen. So, quite frankly, he may decide that he wants to be paid like the best center in the NFL. We will see. But if he continues to play like he's one of the best centers in the NFL, the Miami Dolphins are going to find themselves in a very sticky situation. They're going to have to find money somewhere, somehow. I think that there's going to have to be some restructuring. They may have to make some hard decisions. Heck, for all we know, and I am not going to try to make any predictions about this, but if I were the Miami Dolphins, I would at least consider watching very carefully how Xavier Howard performs this season. Because right now, Miami has just an embarrassment of how many assets they have at cornerback right now. It is just, the level of abundance is embarrassing. You have Nick Needham, who is coming off an Achilles on the PUP list, but he will be back. We already see that he's actually up and running. He's doing hype videos. Byron Jones wasn't doing no hype videos. He was very quiet, very, very ominous about how the whole thing was happening. Nick Needham is out there saying, hey, don't worry about me. I'm going to be ready to rock and roll when the time comes. So I'm not even worried about Nick Needham pulling a Byron Jones on that. But you have Nick Needham, you have Kader Kohu, who Xavier Howard himself went out there and said specifically to watch him very closely because he thinks that Kader Kohu can be something special. And you know what? If Kader Kohu doesn't turn out to be as special as we're hoping, well, the Dolphins doubled down and they have Cam Smith. So they picked him up as a second-round rookie. He could have very easily been a first-round rookie. So the Dolphins were able to get a first-round talent in the second round. So once again, credit Chris Greer for seeing talent where it is. I understand that Cam Smith is friends with his son. He's friends of the Greer family. But you know what? Hey, sometimes it's better to know somebody than it is to be really good at something. And in this case, Chris Greer, he knew Cam Smith. He knew how special he was, picked him up. And now we also hear reports out of training camp just yesterday that Cam Smith was actually making some interesting plays over there. So he was actually, he's getting himself acclimated pretty well, I think. We'll hear more reports as training camp continues. Alfredo Arteaga, Jacob Michelle, they're all going to be there representing the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Ethan Skolnick will also be there at times when he's not doing Miami Heat stuff or, running the business of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, which, by the way, all of you guys who continue to support the network, I really appreciate it. Now let's talk about some connections that are happening out there. So one of the things that was noted by Alfredo in his training camp notes, which, by the way, if you really want to get some good info on those training camp notes, you really need to check out OnlyFins. It's only $3 a month to get into their Discord server. He'll be giving his thoughts on training camp for every practice that he attends, so you're going to be able to get it the first out of anybody else that he reports to, so that's definitely a big benefit. But one of the things that he pointed out, and this is very interesting to me, is that you notice how it's always talk about being a tight-knit group, right? Brian Flores wanted that to be the case. He wanted everybody to play for each other. Okay, that's great and all. It kind of worked. The defense and the offense, it kind of felt like that things were not really there was no joy in Mudville over there when Brian Flores was around. Now Mike McDaniel comes in, and yeah, they are competing with each other, but it feels a lot more lighthearted in a sense. Now, what I wanted to point out was how Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips seem to be really getting this rapport going. Alfredo reported during training camp that Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips seem to follow each other everywhere. And I find that very interesting because you would think, and this is just my take on it, you would think that Bradley Chubb would be palling around with Malik Reed more than Jalen Phillips because Bradley Chubb and Malik Reed knew each other from their time in Denver. They have that already built-in rapport. But maybe that's just it. Maybe that's what it is that's going on here. Maybe Bradley Chubb is taking a look at Jalen Phillips and saying, let me take you under my wing and let me show you what tricks I know. Because let me explain something about how this works. And I have always been an advocate for having older guys on the team who, even if their bodies cannot fulfill what it is they need to do anymore, their minds have not lost a step. I have always been somebody who would like to have player mentors on the team. Many years ago when the Miami Dolphins signed Cortland Finnegan. Remember Cortland Finnegan? That guy was trying to revitalize his career. He used to be a really, really great player. He had fallen off a cliff, basically. And we brought in Cortland Finnegan, and we were hoping, praying that maybe, just maybe, he'd be able to get back to full form. It honestly did not happen. Finnegan was up and down at best. But one thing that Cortland Finnegan was able to do, and this is something that really, really resonated with me and why I am such a strong advocate for always having older guys who can act as mentors for the younger guys on the team. While Cortland Finnegan was in Miami, obviously, yes, he wanted to play to the best of his ability, but what he really wanted to emphasize was that he wanted to teach the younger guys all of the things that he had learned over the course of his career. And that right there is what is so important. Think about somebody like a J.J. Watt, for instance. Do you think there is any doubt that J.J. Watt knows exactly what needs to be done in order to rush the passer? Do you doubt even for a second that his mind is not always as sharp as it ever was? He's retired now. He's done playing, and that's fine. He played a great career. He will eventually make it into the Hall of Fame. I have no doubts about that. But what was it about J.J. Watt that made him continue to be relevant even in the tail end of his career? His body was starting to fall apart. He was getting injured all the time. And even though he wasn't able to contribute in a physical sense, he was able to, once again, just impart that knowledge, that wily veteran status. He was able to give them wisdom that they were able to carry on through him. That's the kind of thing that you can never, ever dismiss. Now you have Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb isn't quite as seasoned as J.J. Watt was because obviously he's not at the tail end of his career just yet, but Bradley Chubb has learned a lot. He is considered, or at least was by many, I think still is by a lot as well, considered a premier pass rusher in the NFL. And Jalen Phillips is coming up strong. This is his third year in the league. He's only gotten better since he was a rookie. And now you have Bradley Chubb, who is going to be used to this defense. Of all the players who know how to make this defense work, Bradley Chubb and Malik Reed too, both know this defense inside and out, at least as far as how Vic Fangio wants the defensive line to function. So for him to hang around with Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, he is getting so much information, so much knowledge, so much wisdom, and there is something to be said about a player mentor that there are just some places a coach can't go. No matter how good of a coach you are, there is just something to having a colleague, somebody who's going to be on that battlefield with you at the same time that you're going to be able to learn from, and that just resonates so much stronger. I remember back to last season when Teron Armstead actually took a moment to gesture to Tua, calm down, relax, we've got this. I still remember seeing him do that, and I thought to myself, now that is a veteran leader right there, because he could see that things were starting to accelerate a little bit out of control. So Teron Armstead just took like less than a second to just turn around and tell Tua, keep your cool, calm down, let's get this done, but make sure that you're staying focused, and let's just make sure that we don't make any mistakes. That just one quick gesture said all of that, and it worked on top of all that. It actually worked. And once again, veteran players, you cannot dismiss them. I know that there's a lot of youth movement. It's always something to be said about how athletic you are, about how strong you are, how fast you are. These veterans are something special, and it's a team of veterans along with young players who are learning and who are receptive to the instruction that is ultimately going to end up winning a Super Bowl. That and having an elite quarterback, which, by the way, for all intents and purposes, because I know this is something we're going to hear about, Tua Tagovailoa did a pretty darn good job in his first day of training camp. We will see what he does in day 2. Jacob Michelle will be there, who is going to be keeping an eye on everything, and we're going to get a report from him as well. But it's just so fascinating to see how everything just seems to have evolved already. We've already heard that the offense is doing a fantastic job, and it makes sense that they have a head start on some things. Jalen Waddle came down with a bobbled pass 40 yards down the field. It was a brilliant move. It was a perfect pass. It hit him in the chest. It's just that he bobbled it, but then he ended up catching it. According to some, they feel like that Javon Holland may have gotten a hand on it first. Some people disagree with that notion. Either way, it came down as a catch for the offense. And at the end of the day, when the games start, you can nitpick all you want about placement, about whether Jalen Waddle should have caught it with his hands, whether he should have jumped up higher, whether the defense made a mistake. Look, at the end of the day, you want that offense to score. You want that offense to do good. And I said during Pulse of Fins Nation, I could not wait to see what that matchup was going to be like. And I'm not talking about the matchup between Javon Holland and Jalen Waddle. I'm talking about Mike McDaniel and Vic Fangio. I want to see these two powerhouses. Mike McDaniel is an offensive savant, and Vic Fangio is basically the godfather of defense in the NFL. I cannot wait to continue to see this play out. There's so much stuff that I want to talk about. There's so much stuff that is going on here. Speaking of people who are actually making friends with each other, if you watched Pulse of Fins Nation the other night, you know that we didn't really get to talk much about the wide receiver room, and I wish we had more time because we went over 2 hours in that show. So if you guys want to check that out, there's a lot of good stuff on there, so you're missing out if you haven't yet. But I digress. I'll get into a little bit about what I wanted to talk about. The wide receiver competition is going to be brutal. There are so many players. There are so many talented guys who can come in and basically be like, hey, I deserve a roster spot. And the list is a long one, okay? I'm just going to go ahead and just read down the list of wide receivers just so you guys can understand what level of talent the Miami Dolphins have. Again, it's an embarrassment of riches, and we should all be thanking our lucky stars that Chris Greer was able to get all these guys together in one room. I cannot wait to see how this is all going to go down. Let me just read the list again so everybody understands what kind of a competition we have here. Braxton Berrios, Robbie Chosen, otherwise known as Robbie Anderson, otherwise known as Chosen Anderson, however you know him, whatever. Chris Coleman, okay, you don't know anything about him, a rookie out of Cal Poly. River Craycraft, we know who he is. He was a great special teams guy, and he was actually able to contribute on offense last season. Dawood Davis, a rookie out of Western Kentucky. Okay, not much to write home about there. Eric Ezukanma, the preseason superstar who Wes Welker was kind of hard on, I guess. He kept saying he wasn't ready to play. Tyreek Hill, no duh. Braylon Sanders, Freddie Swain, Jalen Waddle, Cedric Wilson Jr. That's a list that is going to be very difficult to choose from. Just let's go ahead and play this game here. Let's just take out the guys that we don't know anything about, and we figure, okay, they're just going to be camp bodies at best, right? You already have Tyreek Hill, that's 1. Jalen Waddle, that's 2. And who's number 3? That's a 3-way competition right now. Braxton Berrios, Robbie Chosen, Cedric Wilson Jr., already we have 3 wide receivers fighting for the number 3 wide receiver spot. Now we're up to 5 wide receivers. Does River Craycraft get a spot? Does he get to be number 6? Does number 6 turn out to be Eric Ezukanma? Does number 6 end up being Braylon Sanders, who actually did get some snaps last season? Do they go with Freddie Swain, who is a special teams guy, a kind of returner kind of guy? Or do they just go ahead and just go with only 5 wide receivers? Maybe they keep Braxton Berrios, Robbie Chosen, and Cedric Wilson, and they go ahead and they add some extra tight ends instead because they have a lot of tight ends from last season. They may try to do the same thing again. It's not going to be an easy competition. Depending on how many players the Dolphins decide to keep at each position, there is a lot of players who might end up on the outside looking in. Like, keep in mind, I did not even talk about River Craycraft and Eric Ezukanma as part of the number 3 wide receiver competition. When you take away Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, there's 3 guys who are all fighting for one spot. You add them back to the list, how many wide receivers are you keeping? Just with those 3 guys who are competing for the 3rd wide receiver spot, you already have 5 wide receivers. Which means if you keep 6, then maybe you can keep River Craycraft. Or Eric Ezukanma. Or whoever you want to try to stash on the practice squad. If Eric Ezukanma has another preseason like he did last season, do you think that the Dolphins are going to be able to stash him on the practice squad? I don't think so. I think somebody's going to scoop him up, and they'll scoop him up in a hurry. River Craycraft, I think that if they cut him, he'll probably fall through the cracks, and he'll be able to get stashed back onto the practice squad. I don't think anybody's tripping over themselves to swipe River Craycraft if he gets released. I think he'll be out there and he'll be able to say, okay, I'm ready to come back now, so add me to the practice squad, please. He knows this offense inside and out by now. So he did it with San Francisco. Now he did it in Miami. I think the only reason Trent Sherfield didn't decide to stick around is because he was going to get more money in Buffalo. So best of luck to Trent Sherfield. I'm glad you got paid, but guess what? There's still so much talent on this team. And that's not even considering the concept that the Miami Dolphins still might make a trade somewhere down the line. Maybe there's a wide receiver needy team out there. Cedric Wilson Jr. has supposedly been on the trade block for months now. No team seems to be jumping on it. But if they decide not to, Cedric Wilson Jr. can play. And he's going to be getting the opportunity to play in this offense, this incredibly wide receiver friendly offense, to show that he has a lot of value still to offer. There's just so much to be excited about, guys. I cannot wait to hear more from training camp. I can't wait to see some more highlights just to learn about everything that's been going on. Now, I won't be able to say everything, of course. Obviously, there are some things that we are not allowed to say on here due to some specific training camp rules, but I will try to go as much in depth as I possibly can with every single show. So, thank you all so much for listening. We will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Fins Nation. Make sure you check out PrizePicks.com and Ubreak Wheel Fix, our sponsors, who are making it possible for us to continue doing this on a day-to-day basis. So stay tuned right here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. You've got a lot of Dolphins content coming up, so get excited, folks. We're going to be with you all training camp long.